Hi everyone, welcome back to the Hair Loss Show, and as promised we're going to kick off this series of chatting with experts in which we sit down with other experts in the field from around the globe, and we're able to pick their brain as to how they're doing things, what therapies they're instigating, what they're excited about, and how they're improving their practice continuously. My first guest needs absolutely no introduction. He is famous for a variety of different reasons. Not only is he a phenomenal surgeon, and every forum will attest to that, he's also a lovely guy and a genius on the guitar as well. And so we during this conversation we unpack that, and we really go into depths of how he is such a master at what he does. I'm so grateful and so honored to everyone that's come on this series of talks. And to kick it off, it's my great honor and absolute pleasure to welcome my good friend, Dr. Bruno Ferreira from Portugal. I hope you enjoy, I know you will enjoy this one. Sit down, buckle up, it's going to be a great one.
Welcome to the Hair Loss Show, where Dr. Russell Knudsen and Dr. Vikram Jayaprakash discuss issues relating to hair loss and the medical and surgical treatment of hair loss in both men and women.
Dr. Bruno Ferreira, thank you very much for being here. The man, the myth, the legend. Hey, Bruno, it's great to finally do this. I mean, we talked about doing this when we were in Panama back in November last year. It's taken this sort of amount of time to get it up and running. So I'm really excited about this. Really grateful. I know it's really late for you, so thank you very much for taking the time to do this. You're a very busy man.
Well, I try to, but first of all, thanks. Really, thank you for the invitation. It's actually a big pleasure to be talking to you.
You're a good friend. You're a good man.
We hit it off quite a bit in Panama, and we actually wanted to do this in Panama.
Yes,
but we just kept delaying it.
No, we had too much fun. I think that's the excuse. We were like, okay, we'll let's do this and go to that, and then we'll do this later. So it never came to fruition. So
we should have just put a phone there and just recorded, because we had so many good conversations that one of those would have absolutely be great for this. But likewise, it's an honor to be here speaking with you. Thank you so much for inviting me.
No. The honor's mine, my friend. Look, so you're super busy because you've got a full-time clinic in Portugal. So everyone would know. I mean, you're super famous. Everyone I speak to goes, oh, Bruno is a great guy, and then your work speaks for itself. I mean, I know. We've talked about this in the past. I mean, I know how you, how you worked in the field, and your progress in that. But I don't know, how did you get into it? What was the sort of entry point for you? When did you think, oh, look, let me think about doing this as a career? Because you've been doing it for about 10 years now, isn't it?
Yep. Coming up next year will be 12 years, actually. Well. Actually, I think it's kind of always been in the cards for me for some reason. Really? Well, I can tell you this. When I was a kid, I always kind of had longish hair.
Yeah.
And at some point, right, like in grade school, I think, I don't know, like 5th grade, one of my teachers was like, "Oh, you really have really long hair," and he started calling me the Portuguese word for hair, and that kind of stuck. So people called me hair. That's one of my nicknames I had at the time.
Really?
At the time, they called me hair, but in Portuguese. And then when I got into med school, some people actually started calling me Dr. Hair as a joke. But actually, at that point, there was nothing that would tell me I would go into hair. I always liked anything to do with aesthetics and to actually hair. I always liked hair. I cared for my hair. I was always also bit worried about my hair because basically everyone in the family suffers from baldness, and I guess it was like when I got to dermatology, when I started taking the dermatology part of the med school, I was got into all the treatments, all the minoxidil, finasteride, all that stuff. I was already like into that. And then basically when I got out of med school and I started thinking, okay, where do I want to go? What kind of specialties? And I basically love a bit of everything, to be honest. I would
Mm.
be I'll be glad to be in many different specialties. Fortunately, I'm in this one, and this is my favorite by far. I really love this. But basically, I started asking around, and one of the things I did, I was actually went to a few clinics, and I asked, hey, there was a hair clinic there in Portugal. It was a very famous clinic at the point. And I said, hey, can I watch a surgery? Can I have a look? And they said, well, yeah, sure. Actually, we might have training. Maybe you would like to uh, see the training, and maybe you would like to do it at some point. Well, I'm not sure if I have the availability to do it, but the stars aligned, and turns out I had the availability. I did the training, and on the third day, they were like, "Well, you should come work for us." And
So you actually, I
that's
mean,
kind of how I got into hair.
so was it that fast that you found that you were good at it? Because man, it took me ages. I mean, it was a slow, as in, I knew relatively early on that I enjoyed it, but to be proficient at it, I was like, oh, this is a real, I'm having to work on my craft, so to speak. Was that a really short period for you? You knew you took to it like a duck to water?
I they certainly thought I had. Of
No,
course,
cool.
took me a while to get up to speed and whatnot. Of course, I had some help, and they're not okay. You're by your own, but it was not. I would say it was a bit quick. I
Yeah,
think it was a bit quick for me to be sort of autonomous, but also with support. So I had questions and everything, but I started getting my cases fairly soon, I would
yeah.
say. But also, I started changing things very quickly as well.
Mm.
The stuff I learned, I started changing rather quickly. To be fair, and basically, I think I'm not sure if I. Of course, we all are not as good as we think we are. So now I think that okay, I'm actually not. I feel pretty good about the stuff I did,
Yeah,
but when I think okay, now is way better than 10 years ago or 12 years ago,
of
but
course.
I don't feel like okay, the patients who had me, they were unfortunate because they had me as their doctor. I think I did not try to do stuff that was over my head, so to speak, or
Yeah,
in when I thought something was a bit over my head, I would get the support I needed to.
sure.
I would say that, yes.
I mean, one of the things that I really admire about you, and it just fascinates me, and I love people that have this. It's the real dichotomy because when I meet you and when we hang out, such a relaxed guy. You're so much fun, and you're such a joy to be around. But then I can also see this super meticulous, hyper, critical side of you that is so detail driven in everything that you do in your work. How do you balance that? Because that's just a phenomenal thing. I mean, because you are very, very much. You talk about you mentioned this. You started and you changed things quickly because you were able to analyze it and go right. Okay, how do I make this better to achieve the end point? But I'm always interested to find out how people do that when they've got that other side. A lot of times you meet people that are super super driven. I get that, but you've managed to have that balance and hold that balance really well. In that you're very easygoing, but when it comes to you know certainly work and what you're doing with your craft and your skill set, you're so meticulous and driven. Have you always been like that, or is this just sort of drawn that out of you?
I would say I've always been meticulous,
Yeah.
and but I maybe haven't always been easygoing. I would say that.
Yeah.
So I learned how to balance that later. I mean, after I don't know. I would say as a teenager, as a like starting to get into my teens,
Yeah.
maybe I started because I basically had better friends, better colleagues and friends. They teach me how to relax, take a chill pill. Don't nothing. The world is not ending tomorrow. You can relax a bit, and then I just got into that and got into later in life into a bit more other things that help me be a bit more relaxed and not so hyper. But I am a bit type. I'm type A, definitely. I like order and I like perfection, but also learning how to
Yeah, I mean, oh
be
look, I mean,
relaxed a bit.
I think that's great, and I can see that. But
But I have to say this: you are also a joy to be around, and you are also a very relaxed guy and very easygoing, very fun to be with. So maybe you also bring that out in me. Maybe
oh,
that's
that's
it.
very kind. That's very good. No, no, like I said, it's there's a mutual appreciation society that's going on between the two of us. So I always love any interaction that I can have with you. I mean, coming back to hair, and I'm interested to pick your brain about this, which is you talked about what you learned and then things that you've changed. I mean, and this is probably an unfair question, but if you were to look over the last, say, 5 years, what are the top three things that you think you've changed in your practice that have made the biggest jump in terms of outcome for your patients?
All right, let me think about that. Two come to mind.
Yeah,
One is not being so focused on super high densities.
yeah,
So trying to work with all constantly densities over 50. You don't need that in many cases. Or either I prefer to go a bit more conservative with the density and do a second pass.
yes,
Usually that I think leads to better result. Yeah, we can do, of course, a lot higher density, but I think there is a bigger risk of a bit lower survival. So I changed that to be a bit easier because usually a lot of patients we have to do two surgeries anyway. So
mm,
if you're going to do like a normal four, if you're going to do a front and then back or frontal third, mid scalp crown, we'll do the front, and then as we do the mid scalp and crown, we'll just do a second pass in the front, add a few more grafts, and just perfect it. A lot of patients I say, hey, even if it's just frontal third, there is a possibility we'll want to do a second pass, just a touch up to make it better. And I noticed this because I started getting harder patients with poor donors or more advanced. And I saw, okay, so we have to work with lower densities because we can't make this work with such high densities. And it came back better than expected. Like, oh, okay, so we can work with lower densities and still get great results. Doesn't mean we don't. There are some select patients who have great donors, and then we can add great densities and improve the density and do a second or third pass sometimes. But I think in the long run, the results are better because sometimes we don't need that much density and the patient will be happy. That's one thing.
mm,
The other thing I think is doing basically dividing the surgery into smaller chunks and doing extraction implantation a bit closer instead of extracting a huge amount of grafts and implanting all those. Since I do everything, since I'm extracting and implanting, it takes me a long time.
yeah,
So I'll just divide the surgery into small chunks, and I'll do stints like extract, implant, extract, implant, extract, implant in the same day instead of extracting and then implanting. A
yeah.
lot of people extract in the morning, implant in the afternoon. So now I do the few stints of that. So those are two things that I think make big
Do you
difference.
think that has made so that reducing the out of body time, obviously
Yes.
down to very, very little?
Also reduces my own fatigue, I think.
I was going to ask you that. Yeah.
Because you transition into a different thing, you're doing something different, your body
Yes.
position is different,
Correct.
you don't get bored, so to speak, of doing a very repetitive task for 2 or 3 hours. You change.
Yes.
So I think that helps with focus and makes the surgery better. I would
That's
say those two things are pretty big. I'll have to think about the third one, but the third one I think is just being very in the last 5 years I would say I have totally new staff, which
Yes.
I trained from the beginning.
Hmm.
So I think staff, of course, makes a big difference. Makes a big difference to have great. So selecting the people you work with very well, not just in terms of technique, but also being a bit like me, a bit obstinate, a bit perfectionist,
Yes.
and having a good personality, be easy to work with, and being able to put up with me because I'm easygoing outside of the, or not as easygoing inside, but
Fair enough. That's quite all right, and I think that's and your patients will want that, right? I think that
I guess so.
they want and expect that you are completely driven by the end outcome whilst you're in there, and outside of the theatre, you can, you can be a lot more relaxed. I think everyone will appreciate that. Now, coming back to the other, the first point that you made, I'm interested to ask because I've seen this over time, and you and I have done this sort of for similar number of years, or we've been in this field, that we can sort of attest to this. That when you and I started, the expected number of grafts, maximum number of grafts that were done in a day, is very different to what the expectation is, 10, 12 years down the track. We've obviously become better at what we do. We've obviously become faster and more proficient and efficient at what we do. And again, leading to that
Yeah.
point where you harvest an implant and sort of minimizing out of body time.
You also get better tools with time. I have more staff. Usually when I started, I had one nurse working with me. Now I'll
Right.
have 3 or 4 in, so this, and the amount of grafts, it's a bit, maybe I tried, there was a point when I was doing a lot of grafts in a single day. Now I'll be a bit less than, but
Yes.
of course it's much more than when I started, but still it's not 4,000 grafts I'll do in a day.
I know, and that's the thing for me, because I find, personally in my practice, I don't like doing big numbers in one day for a number of different reasons. I think one, sometimes it's a bit much for the patient to take, uh, both from the length of the day, and also just the impact on the scalp. And secondly, also for me, just doing massive operations. You hear about people going to different places and getting things, 5,000-6,000 grafts done in a single session. And I just sort of I don't even know how that works. But I find that when I bring it up to my patients and I go, look, my suggestion is to split it into 2 sessions, and we can focus on this area, and focus on next time focus on this area, and we can have a look at the first area and see if we need to do any tweaking. Most of them are actually quite receptive and open to the whole thing. No, I've had very little pushback going, oh, you know what, I really need this done in one day, because
Yeah.
I could do that elsewhere. So I think that's it's interesting that you and I are not sort of falling for that sort of pressure to increase our output on a day, just because other places are doing that. And so I think just working within what we know, what we can do, and the output that we can achieve, I think that's probably really critical.
Well, I think that's one of the things that leads to consistency. So it has to be something you can do
Yeah.
every day, or for a significant amount of the days of the week, and long term. So we're not trying to sprint every day, trying to run a marathon, so to speak. So you have of course, the analogy of the sprinting in the marathon, but yeah, you take a bit slower, and then you'll be able to actually do it with the same quality every day, and you won't be like until 10, 11, midnight, 1 in the morning to finish one case, because, well, you committed to a huge amount of grafts, and you'll be tired, your team is going to be tired, your patient is going to be, I just want to go home.
Yeah.
And so yes, I think in terms of being sustainability, just working with smaller numbers. If you're working with a
And you only
small
do one
team,
case a day as well, isn't it? Like myself.
only one patient, yeah, only one patient a day, and, well, actually most of the times half a patient, because we do it over 2 days.
Right.
So yeah, it's not as business wise, it's not the most profitable way, but in terms of results, I think it's the best way.
Oh, look, I think and that's the thing. I mean, if you're in search of perfection and certainly in search of the most optimal result. I mean, everyone talks about, oh, Bruno's just, he's, his the results speak for themselves, and he's so meticulous in what he does. And like I said, that comes across very evidently. Now, but let me ask you this. I mean, we talked about surgery. We talked about, how you do it, how you structure your day. What about other therapies? What are you sort of gravitating to? What are you liking? Has that changed much over the last few years? Are you doing things different?
Well, in terms of therapy, so medical therapy, I usually go for the tried and true, the 5-alpha reductase inhibitors.
Yeah.
I would say in the last year and a half, I've been getting more into the oral minoxidil. So working a lot with oral minoxidil, adding that to a lot of patients, and getting good results with that. Recently, sorry?
What sort of dosing are you using?
I start pretty high. I start at 2.5, and then I'll go and basically double that a lot of the times, and then actually even add more if the patient is tolerating it well, and we still haven't gotten any kind of great response. I'll try to keep adding until we get it. If we don't get it, we don't get it, then we can also always tone it back.
Yeah.
And also, recently I bought a PRP machine. I've always been a bit skeptical about PRP.
I'd love to hear this. Yeah.
I bought a centrifuge. I haven't used it yet, so we'll see. In September, I'll try and use it for the first few guinea pigs who want to test it out, and I'll make my mind up in terms of. So up until this point, I've never been convinced.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to see for myself. So I got the centrifuge. I got the kits.
How are you going to quantify that?
I'll just
in terms of outcome, are you measuring density? I mean, this for me, it's always been
honestly,
a difficult thing to be able to justify to patients. So I do PRP, but I never push it, because I always say to people, look, I mean, every company is going to tell you their PRP machine is the best on the market, and the reality is, yes, I know that there are some systems that will give you a better outcome, as in a better concentrate. And I've got one of the LunaStem devices. I don't know if you've heard of them, which you
I don't
can
think so, no.
Sample through, and you can actually measure it's in your office, so you don't have to send the sample away. You can get a real time sort of metric of how good the how platelet rich or platelet poor the concentrate actually is. But then the reality is that it's the same machine will have a different outcome for you versus me, because our platelet count is going to be different. So this has always been the challenge for me, because I know I see a lot of patients, and I'm sure you do as well, that go, you know what, I've been doing PRP religiously every month for the last sort of 12 months, and I haven't seen an outcome. Does that mean PRP doesn't work? And I say, well, no, it doesn't tell me anything, because I don't know the device that you're using. You don't know what your baseline
protocols, how they're injecting, who's injecting, all that stuff. Yeah. Well, I would say, you're okay. I would say that I'm just going to try different stuff out. In terms of comparison, I like reverting back to pictures, taking good photography, and trying to keep the hair length the same and the style the same, and just taking picture 6 and to 8 to 10 to 12 months after, and see if you see difference. Some people like to use the hair check, and or you can use, of course, the dermoscopy, trichoscopy, and some people do actually a little SMP dot. And
to mark where they've been measuring before.
Exactly. So I haven't gotten into that yet, but usually I like taking pictures. You might do some caliber check, but pictures for me, they always tell the truth.
Mm. But I mean, that's because you're always, and I remember your talk from last year. You're very meticulous about checking and analyzing and planning for patients, aren't you? It's certainly coming back to your surgical side of things. I mean, you do a lot of measurements before you embark on a case. It's not as much. There's not so much of, oh yeah, let's draw a hairline. Let's just estimate. Let me off the top of my head give you a number of what you need. You're very meticulous about how you calculate that, isn't it?
Well, actually, it depends. It depends on how big the case is. Smaller cases, we can, of course, draw a bit more from the eyeballing. And one thing I do is for every patient, I'll gather all the data I need. And for some patients, I will do coverage value, and I will do the measurements, and I'll just do all the calculations. A lot of patients, I can perfectly eyeball it, so to speak.
Yeah.
And then if their hair loss gets more advanced, if the case gets more advanced, then we have the coverage value to calculate. So because coverage value is also limited. If you wanted to use it for hairline cases, just for the hairline, it doesn't really make a big difference, because coverage is not what we are concerned about as much for the hairline, because they're more about naturalness, temporal points the same. Yes. So I like to keep all the data. I gather all the data with caliber, the measuring the hairs per square centimeter. We have everything we need to then calculate it. If we need, you can measure surface areas. We do everything, but not always we measure it, because that's sometimes it takes a long time, and it doesn't really make a difference for smaller cases.
Yeah, no, that's very true. I'm fascinated because how are you measuring the surface area of the recipient?
Well, we use very basic stuff, the transparent sheets and marker.
That's the thing. Honestly, a couple of years ago, I was sort of playing around with the LiDAR, the front-facing camera on my phone.
Yeah, I thought of that.
Yeah, and then being able to scan that and creating a 3D model and using it. And then honestly, I'd heard about it before, but then I went to Thailand for the Asian Congress a few weeks ago, and I was at the live surgery workshop, and everyone was just using this cellophane thing in
I saw that.
And they were measuring, and I was like, that takes about 30 seconds. And that was such I was like, oh my God, all this amazing technology, and you bring it back down to such simple things. They were literally being able to draw the surface area and on a stretch thing, put it on a grid, and be able to, within 30 seconds, tell you what.
Well, honestly, I would love to have something like that, and because I really love technology. I really love all the tech stuff, but I haven't found anything that's actually practical that you can use as quickly as just drawing on a paper sheet on a transparent. And so until I find that, I'll just keep doing the transparencies.
Well, I think that's I had to laugh. It just sometimes it's the basic things that just yield the best outcomes for the time. I'm sure that like I said, this thing, and I've heard about other systems, Keybot, etc., that are able to measure areas.
Oh yeah, more accurately. Yeah. I'll tell you what, I thought of one time, I might still do this. Basically, a device I wanted to do is just a little roll, like a painting roll, with a grid on it. You just mark the squares on the head with that little roll, and then you just measure directly on the head, and then you have the grid. So if you want to do a more exact hairs or grafts per square centimeter, you could just use that grid. Because some doctors, they draw it by hand.
Yes.
That takes some time, and it's not as accurate. If you use a grid, a little roll with basically a grid, the squares, just roll it. It's like a stamp.
Yeah.
You can just measure directly. So it's something that I might just do at some point.
There you go. You can invent that. Call it the Ferreira stamp, or patent pending. That's awesome. I mean, look, you've obviously been very busy with work, and I know you were recently at the Latin American Congress, and then you were also at the World FUE. And congrats, by the way, you're scientific director of the next World FUE Congress.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of work.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I'm quite excited for it. I have
Yes.
tons of ideas, and I really want to get into it, but I know it's going to be a gargantuan task. But
Look, if anyone can do it, I'm sure you can. You'll be fine.
I'm really looking forward to it, though.
So, but looking at those last two conferences that you were at, and we were talking earlier, and you go, I come back and I'm sort of jazzed up by all these ideas. What are the things that you were jazzed up about of the last conference? Where you're going, right, I want to change this in my practice.
Well, this time there's just one little thing I actually wanted to change that was on top of my list.
Yeah.
And I don't remember with whom I spoke about this, but sometimes I'll extract in occipitally and I'll put the patient in prone position.
Yes.
And then when we do a break, usually that coincides with lunch, so they'll have a meal.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they come back and I'll put them back in the prone position. And we're talking about, well, that might not be the best idea because it just has its stomach full. It's going to be again in the prone position. It might not be the best idea. I thought, I want to change that. I haven't thought about that. And so maybe in Portugal, and all the patients learn this when they come, we have just these huge portions here. So it's a lot of food for all patients today. Sometimes they have a lot of trouble finishing it. And so we're just filling them up with food. And then we're putting them back in the prone position. I'm like, this is torture. I have to change this.
So what will you do? You do the prone aspect first thing in the morning?
That's usually what I like to start with occipital area in most cases. Yeah. But in the afternoon, I'm still working either just slightly to the side because I like to work by small areas. So I'll usually go dead center or slightly to the side. And then I'll just keep going either way, depending on what kind of hair I'm looking for. So I'm looking for finer hair. I'm usually go more closer to the nape or closer to the ears. And so I'm like, okay, maybe I should change things around so that when he comes back from lunch, it doesn't coincide with being prone again. So that's one of my resolutions from this. It's a very simple thing. And I would have to look at my notes because I call it on my app. This is an app called Agenda. So I use for this. And I'll just put, this guy's Punta Cana 2023 insights. And I'll just start writing stuff. And it could be stuff that has nothing to do with surgery. It can be just life things because, we meet a lot of interesting and knowledgeable people in all walks of life. And sometimes it could be just personal stuff or use this app or change this or whatever. And I'll just write a big list of insights from that.
I do this. I do a very similar thing actually. And what I love doing is going back. And it's like, I mean, I don't keep a diary as a general thing, but this is effectively mine when I go for conferences. And when you come back many years later and you see the list of things that you've made, and it's fascinating. Some of them you would have implemented, some of them you wouldn't. Some you wouldn't because you'd forgotten about it. Some, would just go right. Okay, well that wasn't such a great idea in the practicality of things. But it gives me a chuckle to come back to it. But look, Bruno. I've kept you longer than I should, and certainly the time that I requested of you. And I know it's super late. I've got to ask.
It's a pleasure. So it's very easy to keep talking with you and into the late hours. And we've experienced this before, so
that's right. And we will do it again when we next catch up. But there's a couple of things I want to ask, and certainly the last cutting edge question is for you. What are you more passionate about, hair or guitar?
All right, that's a tough question because
you're a legend in the guitar. You play in a band as well, and I mean I see pictures that you put up or videos that you put up, and the conferences. You're always a hit. They always ask you to they occasionally ask you to play. So I want to know, hair or guitar, which one are you more?
Maybe I don't have to pick one.
Fair enough. No.
I'll tell you what. Both hair and guitar are things that will be in my life until the end of time for me. So I can tell you that.
That's a great answer and a great way to finish off. Look, I know you're super busy, and so but I mean, if anyone wants to find you, you've got your website, brunoferreira.com, but you've got a huge waiting list, isn't it?
Well,
We won't say anymore. All right.
Yeah,
Don't inundate Bruno with requests or anything. He's a very busy guy. But no, look, you're very famous, and rightly so, because the work that you do is exemplary, and it just couldn't happen to a nicer guy. Because I love you, Bruno. You're such a class act across the board, and you're a great person to speak to, and I'm so honored. I genuinely am that you've taken the time. It's super late, but you made the time for me despite your hectic schedule, and I'm forever grateful for that. So thank you very much.
Well, I love you too, man. It's I mean, my ego is like here. I'll just
No. Oh good. Good.
I can't. I won't fit through that door when I get it out of the office. Well, thank you so much. It's
No.
really huge pleasure, and I hope we do this again.
We'll definitely, look, we'll definitely do this again. I love any conversation with you. Is a great conversation, and I'm so pleased that we got to record this, because even if for nothing else, for me, just to go back and listen to this, it will be there's a lot of gold nuggets in there for me personally as well. So Bruno, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your night, which is not very much left of it.
Actually, I'm off to bed, basically.
You're off to bed now. I've got to get to work. And we'll catch up soon.
Likewise, we'll catch up very soon. Thank you so much for having me and for inviting me to this.
My pleasure. Thanks very much.
Thank you.